Welcome everyone. Welcome coaches, judges, recreational, aspiring and talented surfers, and of course, the most successful female surfer in history, Layne Beachley. So you are tuning in to Her Wave's 4-week Lead Her Drop-In Masterclass series, session 1. The remaining sessions will stage across the next 3 Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. And this initiative is proudly developed by Surfing New South Wales and supported by Sport Australia, who manage the Women Leaders in Sport program. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge that we are hosting this online series from the lands of the Gadigal of the Eora Nation, the traditional custodians, where we pay our respects to the elders, both past and present, and the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people attending the series. My name is Claire and I am the Programs Manager at Surfing New South Wales and one of the drivers in pushing women surfing in our sport. Alongside myself in the Programs team, we have Rach, our Programs Coordinator, and Kate, who is our General Manager of Operations. So at Surfing New South Wales, we have always focused on a really strong female leadership in all operations of the business, where 8 of our 16 staff members are female. We also are very grateful to have 2 supportive and extremely well-accomplished female board members. So before we dive straight in, I would love to introduce you to Her Wave, which is Surfing New South Wales' exciting new women's platform, where Her Wave's mission works to build a more inclusive and joyful female surf culture in New South Wales. So within Her Wave, we have created a series of tiers that will house certain programs and initiatives that cater to all abilities, ages and areas in the sport. And you can check out more on our website. So this specific 4-week masterclass series is the first iteration of opportunities under Lead Her of Her Wave that supports programs that really aim to inspire and empower current and aspiring women to take on and upskill in leadership positions. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking to an absolutely incredible bunch of ladies in our pathways, system and industry, where you'll be very well equipped with the tools to help unlock your own leadership potential. And we are also well aware that potential sits where preparation meets opportunity. So we've also lined up key Surfing Australia staff for next week to educate you all on the coaching and officiating pathway opportunities. So yeah, we just can't wait to see the impact that the series will have in pushing you forward. We hope to inspire more females to take on coaching and judging roles, or just step up in other ways as well. So we can actively encourage, and nurture females in our communities. Right, without further ado, she is going to run us through some Zoom housekeeping and introduce you to our legend of a human and host, Jess Grimwood, and our keynote for the night with the wonderful Layne Beachley. Thank you, Rach.
Thanks, Claire. Welcome all. My name's Rachel. I'm the program coordinator at Surfing New South Wales, and I once upon a time I coached at Cronulla Surf Academy, like a few of the ladies here in the room. A few housekeeping to start. Please stay muted throughout Layne's presentation. We will have time at the end for questions. At the end of the masterclass, we're also going to take a photo with Layne for our socials. So if you would not like to be in that photo, please just turn your camera off. Like Kate said, rename your name so we can see what surf organisation you are from, and we can finally put some names to faces. Now it's my pleasure to introduce Jess Grimwood, our host for the series. Jess is not only an ex-QS surfer, but also an exceptional spokesperson for our sport. Jess has worked in our events department at Surfing New South Wales and is currently a commentator at both our events and the World Surfing League events. She has recently just started a podcast, The New Olympians of Surfing, which I highly recommend. You can subscribe by the chat box. I think Kate's going to just plug it in there. Jess is an avid North Shelley board rider member, but most importantly, Jess is the friendliest surfer in the lineup and always smiling and the first to say hi. So welcome, Jess.
Thank you very much, Rach, and thank you to everybody on here tonight. What a great turnout, and it's my absolute pleasure and privilege to be here and to be a part of the surf industry at a time when the government And our state and national sporting body are putting so much energy and support behind women in leadership and our career pathways in the industry. Now, of course, once again, welcome to Masterclass number 1 for the series, Paving the Way. Now, tonight's session is based around 3 key themes. It's surfing and thriving, in a male-dominated environment, challenging the status quo, and instigating and adapting to change in our industry. Now, when we talk about paving the way in the surf industry, there's really only one woman that we can start this conversation off with. And that brings me to introduce, of course, our keynote speaker for tonight. In 2015, she became the chairperson of Surfing Australia and the first former female world champion in any sport to take a role like that in a national sporting organisation. She was awarded in 2015 as well the Officer of Order of Australia for her service to the community through sport, women in leadership, and of course her world champ status. She spent 15 years of service on the Association of Surfing Professionals Board and ran the richest women's tour event for 7 years in a row. She's the founder and director of the Layne Beachley Foundation and Aim for the Stars, and the Chief Awakening Officer at Awake Academy. She's won 7 world titles, 6 of them consecutively, and enjoyed 29 tour victories along the way. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you, and it is my absolute honour to do so, to tonight's speaker, Layne Beachley.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight. I also wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we all meet on tonight, and pay my respects to past, present, to all elders, past, present, and emerging. I wish to also express my deepest gratitude and congratulations to Surfing New South Wales for this initiative. I want to recognise and say hi to the only man in the room, Luke, the CEO, the CEO of Surfing New South Wales. Thanks for joining us. The odds are forever in your favour tonight, mate. And for everyone who's made the effort from wherever you are around the country and around the world, thank you so much for joining me and what is going to be a wonderful session. Thank you so much for being here. So yeah, there's a few themes to talk about, but I actually haven't really created a particular talk that I wanted to share with you tonight. I just wanted to see all your smiling faces and get an idea of what you wanted me to talk about. Feel free to ask a question. I know Jenny's already had her hand up. I saw her on the front screen here, but feel free to ask any questions. Just throw them in the chat box and I'll address them as we go. But I did want to talk a little bit about my journey and how I find myself in the position that I'm in today. I walked down to freshwater for a swim early this morning. I had to do a keynote for Are You OK Day, like a pre-recorded session for Are You OK Day, because I'm an ambassador for Are You OK? And for all of you that may be aware of what Are You OK is about, it's all about asking a question that could potentially save a life. And the reason I'm an ambassador for Are You OK is I've experienced my several bouts of depression throughout my career. And when I was walking down the water, someone stopped me both going into the water, and then someone else stopped me leaving the water, basically to thank me for all the work that I do and thank me for elevating women and celebrating people and being so positive and optimistic and giving people a sense of hope and optimism to their lives. And it made me start to reflect on the career and the life that I've lived, and it made me realize, you know what? Our situations don't dictate the terms of our lives to us. Our lives are actually determined by how we respond to the situations in front of us. And when I reflect back on my career, there was plenty of situations and times where I've made some pretty big mistakes. There was plenty of situations where I think, geez, if I had my time again, I wouldn't have played it like that. And a lot of people also ask me, do you think you would have won 6 consecutive world titles if you weren't as fiercely driven and fiercely focused as you were? Now, as Jess introduced me, she said I'm a 7 times world champion, the only surfer to win 6 consecutive world titles, which is true. Only King Kelly won 5, and don't I remind him of that. But at the end of the day, what I do realize is that out of those 7 world titles, 5 of them were won in a state of fear, and 2 of them were won in a state of love. And so tonight I'm going to reflect a little bit on what the difference is about perspective, about striving and achieving through a fear-based mentality versus striving and thriving through a love-based mentality. Because you can do both, but the fear-based mentality is anchored in struggle. It's anchored in suffering. And from a woman who's come through at a time when surfing, and I see Sandra English on this call as well, who would have a million stories about what it takes to succeed and thrive in a male-dominated environment. From my experience, when I started surfing at Manly Beach back in 1976, it was a very threatening and intimidating environment. And that was before the guys paddled out. That was an environment where women didn't really feel welcome because of the power and the intimidation of nature. And it takes a lot of courage to surrender to that, irrespective of gender. It takes a lot of courage to surrender to a force that is way more powerful than you are. So when I started surfing as a 4-year-old, I was, of course, the only girl in the water, but I didn't see it, or I didn't frame it as a male-dominated environment. I saw it as an environment that I truly loved to be in. And because I loved it so much, I believed that I belonged in this environment. And it wasn't until I started becoming a more competent surfer and a more confident surfer, and it wasn't, of course, until I started declaring my objectives and my ultimate goals to people, did it become more hostile and intimidating and threatening. See, it takes a lot of courage to draw a line in the sand and then step over it and say, this is what I'm going after and this is what I want. How many of us actually stop and ask ourselves, what is it that we want? And then who is it that we need around us to achieve that? My model for sustained success is clarity of vision, dream team, and action. You have to know what you're going after. What's your personal why? What's your driver? Why is it that you get up every day to do what you do? Why are you even here? What's in it for you? At the end of the day, the legacy that we leave is much larger than what we go after for ourselves. It's actually what pathway we pave for others to follow in our footsteps. I just wanted to make it easier for women following in my footsteps, especially once I hit the tour. Anyway, the second part is your dream team. Who is it around you? Because we become the sum of the top 5 people we spend the most amount of time with. And I put those people in 2 different categories, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And then finally, what actions are you taking daily that's either getting you closer to your dream team or closer to your vision? So when I started surfing as a 4-year-old, I found my happy place, my place of belonging. The ocean's still my place of solace. It's somewhere I revert to every single day. And then by the time I was 5 years of age, I was out the back, paddling out there, having a good old time. And then when I progressed from my foamy onto my fiberglass surfboard, it felt like I was graduating from like primary school to high school. And I was 14 when I got off my foamy and jumped onto my fiberglass board. And by the time I jumped onto my fiberglass board, I was now in a completely different environment, different zone, different people, and different levels of hostility and challenge. So the number one lesson that I love to share with women in entering into a male-dominated environment where they feel threatened and intimidated is to find your allies. What I mean by that is find the person who's going to back you up no matter what. Find an ally who believes in you, sometimes more than you believe in yourself. Never be the smartest person in the room. Find someone who has greater knowledge, a greater depth of understanding, greater experience, and stick with them. Because true leadership is authentic leadership. True leaders love to share their life lessons with others to shortcut the struggle. And that's what I'm all about today. So when I started encroaching upon the northern end of the beach, I encountered the threats and hostility of the boys at North Stain, who would grab my leash and pull me off waves, push me off my board, splash water in my face, paddle up to me and say, "You're a girl, get out of the water." And I'd look back at them and go, "What are you doing out here then?" Like, I really had to stand up and fight for what I believed in. But what gave me the courage to do that was 2 things. Number one, I knew exactly what I wanted. I want to be world champion. But to achieve that, I have to surround myself with surfers who are better than me. Because if I'm just the best surfer in the water all the time, I'm not growing. And the only sign of life is growth. And number 2 was my dream team, my allies, the guys who supported me. So for every one of those guys that gave me a hard time and said, "You're a girl, get out of the water, you don't deserve to be out here," there was another guy sitting next to them that said, "I believe in you, you've got what it takes." So who do you listen to? Do you listen to constantly the criticism, the fear-based negativity, the ego-driven bullshit lies and stories where guys say, you're a girl, you can't do this? Or do you find your allies in your life, both male and female, both successful or maybe not, it doesn't matter, but the people who elevate you, your honesty barometers, the people who bring the best out in you? Because if it wasn't for my allies, and I must admit, there were certain times in my life when I wanted to paddle in, and I did. I had tears in my eyes, I tucked my tail between my legs, and I paddled in feeling very deflated, very upset. I'd go home and I'd cry in my pillow and I'd tell my dad the boys are bastards and I never want to go back out there again. And he'd say, come on, out you go, get back out there, let them know that they don't determine the quality of your life, you do. So I kept going back out there, and finally I graduated to Queenscliff, and they were a more welcoming environment. And I joined QBC, and I was the only girl in the club for a little while. Oh, actually Stu Levette and a couple of other girls were there. And I got to surf with people who were encouraging and supportive. So I crave being in an environment where I'm supported, but I have this underlying negative belief, limiting story that suggests to me that men don't respect women. And it's easy to find evidence of it because I can just reflect back on the first 30 years of my surfing life. And there's plenty of evidence to suggest that men don't respect women. You've all heard the classic saying, especially when I joined the tour, oh, it's turned to shit, send the girls out. That was a classic because it's true. That's what happened every day. I mean, we had the industry lobbying against us. We had our governing body lobbying against us, and we had our male peers lobbying against us on the beach at an event. And this is in the year 2000s. Like in 2002, we were competing in France alongside the men. And as the women's tour director, I had to negotiate with the men on the beach. And we negotiated a deal that was fair and square. We would surf first, men would surf 4 heats, then we would surf our semis, men would surf 4 heats, then we'd surf our final. And halfway during their four heats, the waves got so good that we were just like, yeah, this is going to be the best waves we've had in our whole lives in a contest. And the guys protested. They stormed the tower. They protested the contest director because the waves were going to be too good for us. For the first time in a very long time, we banded together and we stood up and fought for what we believed in. Fortunately, our allies within the industry also fought for us, and we won. And we won in so many ways that day because we got really good waves, and it was the best the guys have ever seen us perform. Well, duh, you put us in shit waves, we're going to surf like shit, but you put us in good waves and we surf really well, and that's exactly what happened. So it was a real big win for women surfing, and it taught us a lot. It taught us a lot about standing firm. It taught us a lot about standing firm together. Now, I grew up at a time where women's surfing was devalued. It was devalued by, as I said, the industry, the governing body, and our male peers. So when you find yourself in an environment where you're devalued, you not only bring yourself down, but you bring each other down. And that's what we did. We saw it as a finite opportunity. Women naturally have a minority, well, we're naturally a minority in the majority of situations. So we have a scarcity mentality. So what that means is if we see a woman achieve something, we see that as one less opportunity for us to achieve. Whereas with men, when they see another man achieve, they see that as a pathway to their success. So my objective when I joined the women's tour in 1990 was to start laying those pavers down, was to start creating a pathway for women to ensure that they didn't have to suffer the same level of adversity, the same levels of intimidation, the same levels of disrespect and disregard, the same levels of pain and suffering that me and my generation and my predecessors have suffered. Now, most of you, I'm sure, have seen the wonderful documentary called Girls Can't Surf. And there was a lot of stuff in there that took a lot of us by surprise, especially some of the commentary by the guys. I'm sure that took Bainey and Elko and Duma and all those boys. I'm sure they probably watched that and going, oh my goodness, did I really say that? And guess what? They all had daughters. I call that karma. But it's also wonderful because it may give them an opportunity to shift their perspective and realize that they were holding us back. They were holding the sport back. So it was up to us to stand up and fight for what we believed in. Unfortunately, we did, but it takes courage, ladies. It really does. But to do that, you have to have your allies. So I found my allies in the boardroom, and today I still find my allies in the boardroom, at the beach. You know what? When there's people out in the water that have no understanding of etiquette and no understanding of the rules of what goes on in the water, irrespective of age or gender, and I may have abused some of you in the water, I'm not sure. Unlike Jess, I'm not always the happiest, smiliest person in the water. However, I love to educate people, but I do it with empathy and I do it with patience, to the point where I will paddle up to someone and ask them first, where are you from and how long have you been surfing? Because that puts everything in perspective. But before I do that, I do grab one of the surfers that I surf with, one of the guys. I go, listen, I'm just going to go and have a chat with this guy. He's dropped in on you 3 times. He just dropped in on me. This is unacceptable behavior. In the event he gets hostile, can you just be close by and back me up? Just need your support on this one. They're like, yeah, sure, you go. I'm like the law enforcement officer. I need like a sheriff's badge when I go surfing or something. But it's all about education. And the reason that I'm so passionate about educating people is because I wasn't educated. For you people who are over 50, you may have remembered a name called Stuart Entwistle. And he was my ally. He was my educator. He was the world longboard champion down there at Manly Beach. And I used to drop in on everybody all the time because no one taught me that that was the wrong thing to do. Especially when you grow up on a foamy in the flags, you just drop in on everybody, which is what I did for about 9 years. Anyway, Stuart taught me etiquette. He taught me he took the time to teach me about the natural pecking order in the water. And he was my teacher. He was my mentor. And then I had a variety of different mentors. But if you want to become successful, surround yourself with successful people. I ended up with mentors like Pam Burridge, Tom Carroll, Martin Potter, Barton Lynch, Wendy Botha, like Pauline Mensah. All of these women were my mentors throughout my whole career. Lisa Anderson. And I'm really grateful that they were able to instill their wisdom in me and shortcut my struggle. So paving the way literally starts with having a vision for what legacy you want to leave and how you want to make the world a better place. So when you leave whatever arena you're currently operating in, you leave it in a better place than how you found it. Now, it's not an easy thing to do, and you may end up being rejected or ridiculed or insulted by your peers. And I don't know if anyone's watching Rivals, but this is the Rivals show that Surfing Australia have put out, which is basically pitting girls like me, Chelsea Hedges, Sophia Milanovic, Rochelle Ballard, Sam Cornish, Serena Brooke, putting us all together and making us surf in our home breaks. Kate Scarrett, we're surfing in our own home breaks. But what's been really interesting about this program is what you're not privy to is there's a lot of banter going on via email amongst us. And I'm still copying insults from my peers, you know. I got an email from Kiala because showed that, you know, they showed my trophy room on Rivals, and Chelsea sent an email saying, I don't know if there's much more room in your trophy room. I said, yeah, there's always a little bit more room. I could always find another space. And I got an email from Kiala Kennelly saying, yeah, there might be more room in your trophy room, but there's certainly not enough room in this world for your overinflated ego. So there's still some healthy rivalries going on out there. You're still going to cop the insults no matter how long it goes on for. But the intention is to leave the sport in a better place than how you found it. And I see a question here. Do you feel your allies sometimes need men to be valued in certain environments? Do you feel your allies sometimes need to be men to be valued in certain environments? Either way, my greatest mentors and allies have been both men and women, but it comes from a mutual understanding of respect and recognition. And it was those experiences, yes, need to be men. Thanks, Elgie. I don't think it's circumstantial or environmental. At the end of the day, it comes down to relationship building. Just remember that the people or the shoulders that you step on the way up are the same ones that you need to lean on the way back down. Life is all about building relationships. And I feel that that's also accounted to my opportunity to be sitting in the chair that I sit in, which is the chair of Surfing Australia. And that comes with a lot of responsibility and a lot of enjoyment, but ultimately it's because of the relationships that I've built. So that was the piece around striving and thriving in a male-dominated environment. And I've almost used up my whole 30 minutes talking about that. But another thing I want to share with you is what inspired me to stage the richest surfing event in the world, which is the Beachley Classic, which ran for 7 years. A lot of sevens repeating in my life. Anyway, when I was sitting on the board of directors and I continually requested a prize money increase from the ASP, their rebuttal was always, you're not worth it, it's not worth it, you're not that valuable, you don't make commercial sense, the women's tour doesn't really add any value to the men's tour. And as you saw in Girls Can't Surf, if indeed you did see that documentary, they would often drop our events to invest in the men's events because we were just completely devalued. I sat on the board for 15 years and I continued to just beg to a point for greater opportunity and equal opportunity. And because it wasn't respected, I decided, all right, screw you, I'm just going to do it myself. And I'm the only surfer in the history of the sport that would consider mortgaging their house to stage an event to invest in women's surfing. And the premise behind it was threefold. Number one was to ensure that whoever came dead last from wherever they had to travel from, that their bare expenses were covered and a little bit more, with a little bit of the cream on top. Because I wasn't sponsored. I walked away from Billabong after 8 years with them and winning 6 world titles because our values weren't aligned, our visions weren't aligned. And I'm a very, as you can imagine, principled human being. And I had a chance to see how hard it was to do the tour in 2006 without a sponsor. And that was 50% of the women's tour were traveling and living off their prize money checks. I thought, well, this is unacceptable. Something needs to be done about this. And the industry wouldn't do anything about it. The governing body wouldn't do anything about it. So once again, I took it upon myself and my own shoulders to do it. So I went and got a license and I put the prize money at $100,000 US total, with the objective to, yes, increase the prize money and make it affordable. Number two was to invite the top 12 under 16-year-olds from around the world to compete in a trials event, for one of them to earn the right to come and compete against the best girls in the world. And the biggest mistake I made that first year was I invited Stephanie Gilmore. That girl had no respect for her elders. My goodness. She just came and wiped the slate clean. And then 2 years later, guess what? Tyler Wright did the same thing as a 14-year-old. Here's 20 grand US. Go back to high school. Go get yourself an education and then come and wipe the slate. Yeah. I agree with Sally. Bloody Groms, disrespectful. But no, it achieved exactly what I wanted to achieve. And then thirdly was to get us away from the comparison to men. I just wanted women's surfing to stand on its own 2 feet. I wouldn't allow the surfing industry to sponsor it. And I wanted just women to be surfing for the sake of and the joy of competing against women. Let's eliminate all that comparison stuff. So after 7 years, I continued to increase the prize money. And it got to the point where it took the industry 3 years to match me. And then after the 4th year, I kept increasing it from there. And so they never matched me. So I was always the richest surfing event in the world. And then in 2013, I wound it up. 2014, the WSL bought the tour. And then 2018, they announced pay equity. So it's amazing how just doing something that maybe not considered very popular or ideal, that you can actually change the landscape forever. You can actually create something really meaningful. But ladies, what I want to really impart upon you is the fact that you may now be planting a seed and watering a seed for a tree that you may never have the chance to sit under. When they announced pay equity, I never in my wildest dreams imagined that would happen to surfing in my lifetime. Never. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes when Sophie Goldschmidt called me to say that they're announcing pay equity. I was absolutely stunned. So for all of you that are pursuing a pathway that you may perceive as being male-dominated or intimidating or unwelcoming, just be reassured that you're actually doing something really meaningful, really valuable, really necessary. And at the end of the day, you're also creating a pathway for future generations to follow in your footsteps. I know that the majority of the future generation have no idea what my generation and my predecessors and their predecessors have been through. And I'm grateful that the documentary Girls Can't Surf shines a bit of a light on it. But it all comes down to your why, your vision. what is it that you want to achieve? What's the difference you want to make, and what's the legacy you want to leave? Because paving the way for me was my vision. I wanted to make it easier. I wanted to make it more valuable. I wanted to make it more fun, more inclusive, a safer, more equal environment for women. And I know we're well on our ways to doing that. And I'm really grateful that organisations like Surfing New South Wales are also so heavily invested in that. And it's great to see so many women on this call tonight who believe in that and see it as a viable opportunity. Because in school, in year 11, my report card said, lock up Layne's surfboard. It's a distraction from her studies and it'll amount to nothing. And how right they were. It was a serious distraction from my studies, but it amounted to a whole lot more. So I'm really grateful for that. So I'm just going to look here at Rachel's question. In a sport where women are a minority, do you often find that it makes the environment and relationship for women more competitive and makes it harder to form healthy bonds between the women? It's a very good question. I believe it's a bit of a cop-out, and that goes back to what I mentioned earlier around the scarcity mentality. We are the minority in the majority of situations, but we need to get past that and stop seeing it as a limited opportunity and start seeing it as an opportunity to challenge the status quo. The way that we challenge the status quo is we continue to stand up and we continue to invest in ourselves, in our knowledge, in our experience, but we also continue to share in the value of that with the people that it impacts the most. Now, from my experience of challenging the status quo, I did it all wrong. I did it with a punch in the face. What the hell is going on with you guys? Don't you understand? Women are valuable. We have something to offer here. Don't you get it? Obviously not. You guys are dickheads. And because I just kept doing it through an abusive channel and they didn't understand, it ended up pushing them further, even further away. Challenging the status quo actually is the best way to do it is through compassion and patience and understanding. So taking the time to see it from their point of view, which I never did. I just kept demanding. We need more prize money. We need more quality events. We need more quality waves. We need more opportunities. Come on, you guys, don't you get it? I never realized that it actually costs a lot of money to do that. I mean, my event costs almost $1 million to run. And actually Luke was one of my staff during my event. So it takes time, ladies, is what I'm getting to. Challenging the status quo takes time, but always comes back to your vision. What is it that you want? What's the difference you want to make? And then who do you need around you to help you make that? Women need to bond together to understand it. Now, I understand that we can have a bit of emotional and vindictive behavior towards each other, but that's not always the case. Now my greatest friends and mentors are women, but I always used to rely on men because I was more comfortable in that environment. But now I actually rely on the nurturing and the compassion and the friendship of my female peers. A couple of questions. I have a local fight in trying to get local board riders clubs to provide equal pay for positions in comps. Does Surfing Australia now support, promote and endorse equal prize money with local board riders? We actually haven't had this discussion with local board riders clubs because I didn't realize board riders clubs actually provide prize money. That's pretty cool. I want to come and compete at your board riders club. That's amazing. But depending on your state, you'd be better off actually connecting with your state body and having that discussion with them. But yeah, we're all about equal prize money for sure. And that's something that takes time. You can't just expect it to be initiated now, as we saw with the Curl Longboard event. That's all about saying, hang on, this is unacceptable, but we need to continue to let the guys know, because it's an unconscious bias most of the time. It's just how it's done, right? It's how it's been done for centuries. Why don't we just keep doing it? Well, you know what? How it's done is not good enough and we need to change it. But doing it publicly through ridicule is not the respectful way to do it. And that was the mistake that I made with my sponsor, with the industry and with the governing body. Women and girls are outnumbering you in Newport, Deb. So many girls take up the sport with a very positive, inclusive attitude. The future is bright for girls in the sport. I see more girls in the water today than I've ever seen. And it's so encouraging to see, except when they don't understand that dropping in is not a good idea. Sometimes I just have to educate them. So that's challenging the status quo, doing it respectfully, making sure that you have a really clear argument and a really clear directive, and you have the patience to see it implemented over a period of time. Don't expect it just to happen tomorrow, because these things need to be budgeted for, they need to be planned for, they need to be integrated into organizations. It takes time. And then the last theme, Jess, remind me, what's my last theme?
Oh, you kind of already covered it, Layne, but it was adapting to and instigating change, which is you kind of addressed with your Beachley Classic. I
have. That means we can go to questions. Does anybody have one?
Yeah, absolutely. If you have questions to Layne about anything you've just heard or it seems to be anything, yeah, there you go. Take it away, Layne.
Ash's got one. Hang on. Elkie, naming rights sponsor, came on board. Okay. All right. Asha, what is your advice for building and maintaining confidence out in the water, even when in a male-dominated surf spots? Yeah, I see women, and you know what? I see women almost imitating what groms do. You know how most groms, sit on the inside, they pick up all the scraps, they wait until they're almost given permission, which I like that with groms, because otherwise they get really cocky and you need to give them a talking to. But with the girls, the lesson that I learned as a young kid, and this may still pertain to how you all approach it today, is that I would eye off the best surfer in the water, and I'd go up to them and just ask them to help me. I'd be like, God, you're obvious. And what man doesn't love a bit of an ego push? You are the best surfer out here. I'm struggling to catch waves. I don't want to sit on the inside with the grommets. I know how to catch a wave and get to my feet, but it's a really intimidating environment. Do you think you could help me out? Most men would respond pretty positively to that. And if they don't, then that says a lot about them, and you don't want to spend any time surfing with them. So paddle away and go find another guy. And it's the same with those women. If a girl paddled up to me, and look, I do like to help women in the water. I don't like seeing anyone struggle, quite honestly. But if a woman came up to me and said, I need some help, then I'm always going to say, let me get you into a wave. But quite often I've paddled up to girls who are out in the water who seem to be having a bit of a struggle, and I've offered advice, and they're like, beat it. I got this. I know what I'm doing. And I'm thinking, clearly you don't, but that's okay. That's your perspective. So when it comes to building confidence in the water, look, the only way you build confidence is through action. Sometimes we wait until we have the confidence to do something, but it's the action that builds the confidence, not the other way around. The confidence comes from figuring it out as you go. But if you keep holding back and waiting for someone to either give you permission or tell you how to do it or what to do, then you're not going to be able to build the confidence. So take the initiative and paddle up to the best surfer in the water and give them a bit of an ego boost, and then ask them for their help. And I'm sure they'll be more than happy to reach out and make sure they get you into a quality wave. We only need one. All we need is one wave. Makes our day. What legacy do you want to leave from what you have learned from surfing, your career running comps, and having a foundation? Wow. That's a really big question, Melanie. My legacy has changed. My legacy, obviously, in surfing, and still with Surfing Australia, my legacy is to make it a more safe, inclusive, and equal environment. And Tyler Wright has taught me that. I did a strategy session with Tyler, and she's obviously very passionate about a variety of different causes. But I want surfing to be a safe, equal, and inclusive environment. That's really all I've ever wanted. And I'm not here to make friends or earn the respect of my peers and counterparts, because you know what? Everyone's going to create a story about you, and you can't change their story about you, much like I can't change Keala Kennelly's opinion of me, but I can keep doing what I really was born here to do, or put here to do, and that was to make a difference in my own way, and do it in a way that I know is making a lasting impact and paving a positive way and challenging those negative biases and those unconscious biases and making it easier. I mean, that's really the legacy. I want to inspire all of you to believe that, yes, you can be a judge. You can be a head judge of the Pro Tour. You can be an Olympic judge, right? There's nothing stopping you from doing that, other than if you are waiting to see it to be it, then yeah, you may never do it. You know, it's the classic saying that if you can't see it, you can't be it. You know what? I couldn't see any other woman that had won 6 world titles, but I chose to be it. I saw Kelly had won 5, and I thought, I want to outdo Kelly Slater. I'm going to go after 6. Why not? I'm not going to wait for some other woman to do it. So I chose to be it before I could see it. and I chose to see it just within my own imagination. That's part of my vision. I want to be the best in the world. I want to be the best of the best. And I'm putting that stake in the sand and I'm going after that. So that was my vision as a surfer. As a chairwoman, it's a little different. It's actually elevating women, supporting women, bringing more women into the boardroom. And it disappoints me that our sporting bodies around this country haven't really cottoned onto that just yet. And that's something I'm very passionate about, because I walked into the chairs at our AGM a couple of years ago, and there was 14 men and me. And I was like, fuck, what's happened? How did this happen? Where are all the girls? And then Surfing Victoria put on a female chair, but the rest, it's boys after boys after boys. I'm like, nah, this isn't good enough. I need to change this. So I'm working towards that. But I've also got to recognize it takes time. We've got to find the talent. We've got to dig a little deeper. We've got to challenge those status quos. And when it comes to my life now, as a motivational speaker and as a founder of Awake Academy, I'm all about awakening others because it awakens me. That's my why. That's why I get up every day. I want to help people fulfill their potential. I want to help people detach from fear, bring back the fun, find their flow. I want to help people live a life that they love, because I'm very fortunate that I've been able to do that too. So if I could do it all again in terms of building women's, thank you, building women's surfing competitions, would you do it anything differently? Yes, Juliana, I would do a few things differently, but I don't really subscribe to woulda, coulda, shoulda, because everything that happened back there is just a valuable life lesson. I go back there, I grab bits from it, like, yep, that's good. Yep, that didn't work. Okay, let that go. Let's focus on here. So the past is a great reflection point. Unfortunately, we usually rely on the past to predict future. And then we become these self-fulfilling prophecies that we just keep repeating the same shit time and time again. So I like to grab bits from the past and move to the future. I learnt how not to do it, and I learnt how to do it. And most of us learn and know what we don't want before what we do want. And what you don't want, or where you're not wanting to be, is a great place to start, because if you're restless and uncomfortable, that's a really good indication that things need to shift and things need to change. If I look back at the tour and the way that I govern, the way that my role as the executive director on the women's tour, yes, I definitely would have done things differently. I definitely would have stood firmer in my values. I definitely would have created stronger allies around the boardroom table. I definitely would have communicated a lot clearer with my peers and counterparts, but I just expected them to be mind readers and accept my choices. So it was all about openness and transparency and honesty, as opposed to, and I had a real brash mentality. I was like, let's do it and let's get it done. I was too impetuous. I just had to have it happen now. Come on, let's do this. Why don't you get it? Let's go. Not recognizing that it does take time to change. What was my biggest mistake and what did you learn from it? And is there a woman that you look up to? And if yes, why do you look up to her? You know what? I'll go to Kira Bell's question, because I love you, Kira Bell. I can't wait to share some waves with you soon. I've never looked up to anybody because I believe that if you have heroes, that you're putting someone above you and that you're discounting your own value as a human being. It's like they're so much better than I am, and I'm not going to be worthy of that status until I'm put up there. But the thing is, as human beings, we never put ourselves up there. We always keep ourselves down here and we put everyone else up above us. So I've never had heroes. I've never looked up so much to people as I've looked at and learned from. People like Wendy Botha, Lisa Anderson, Pam Burridge, Pauline Mensah, my mum, my best friends at high school, my current girlfriend's circle. You know, I've had a lot of women, both in and outside of sport. Kathy Freeman, just all sorts of women in my life who I refer to as my honesty barometers. I mean, Kathy Freeman, when I lost in the last Beachley Classic that I surfed in, or the second last one actually, I lost to Sally Fitzgibbons in the third round. I don't know why I invited her either. Anyway, kidding. I love Sally. Anyway, I was deeply distraught. I was so distressed. I was bawling my eyes out on the beach because I knew what it meant. I knew that all my chances were dashed of ever winning another event or another world title. And I got a phone call from Kathy Freeman that afternoon. She's like, is everything okay? Are you and Kirk okay? Is everything all right? I'm like, yeah. She said, what happened? And I said, oh, I just lost at a contest today. And she's like, oh my God, thank God for that. For fuck's sakes, Layne, it's only sport. It's just surfing. Come on, let it go. I went, oh yeah, you're right. Thanks, Kathy. I just needed a dose of perspective. So I'm really grateful that I have this network of women around me that just keep me balanced and centered. So the biggest mistake that I made and what I learned from it is taking myself way too seriously. That was a really valuable lesson. I just took myself and everyone else around me seriously. So what that meant was that I projected my expectations and fears onto everyone around me as well. So that kept people at arm's distance, and it kept me feeling very isolated. It actually made me feel very unprotected and unsupported. And as an adoptee with a fear-based, like a massive rejection case, that just fueled my fear and fueled my belief that I've been abandoned and I'm unworthy of love. So that was my biggest mistake was allowing that driving force to keep me stuck in that mentality and just taking myself way too seriously. Thank you for that beautiful message, Olivia. I only had my hand up because I'm useless with technology, but do you see women judging full panels in the future? Jenny, don't be so hard on yourself. You're the only one that's actually put your hand up. So you're way better with this technology than any of us. Embrace that. Anyone else want to put their hand up? Go down to reactions and you can put your hand up. I've just got to see it. Do I see full female panels in the future? I don't know. My first response, and I'll be honest, is I don't want to see full female panels. I like the diversity of a mixed panel. I like the fact that, you know, we all view it and see it and experience it through our own narratives, our own eyes. So, and vision actually doesn't start with the eyes, it starts with the brain, because how we see, like every one of us sees something and we view it through a different lens. So I'd love to see more female judges being rotated through panels. I'd love to see, if it's a 6 or 5 person panel, I'd love to see 3 women and 2 guys just to balance things out. But that's how I see the future of, especially of judging. We just need more women getting involved, and we need to make it a more safe and inclusive and equal environment for women. This isn't a tokenistic movement that Surfing New South Wales are investing in. We as a sporting world, a sporting body, we need you. We need more women involved, because it's going to make it a better place. It's going to actually enable us to be bigger and better and more successful on a national, on a regional and state and national and global scale. So please keep jumping in there and having a go. Question from Emily and Newey. Currently in the board riders where I'm the current active female, or the only active female member, trying to recruit women. I would love any advice on how to attract women with limited funds. That's a tough one, Emily. I know my local board riders down here around the corner from Queenscliff don't have any women. And you know what? They've never actually made any proactive steps towards attracting women other than expecting me to come down there and surf with them. That's tokenistic. And also it's on a hiding to nothing, because I'll beat a lot of them. However, attracting women, look, some women just don't want to compete, and that's entirely okay. It's about making it fun. It's about making it interactive. I think, you know, if women feel like they belong somewhere, they'll stay there. But if they don't feel like they belong, then they won't. I don't know if anyone else agrees with that, but if you don't feel comfortable enough that you feel like you're welcome in this environment, then don't just invite me there to make up numbers. Don't just invite me there to fulfill your quotas, because I'm not going to stay there for very long. You have to actually make a really proactive stance about why. It all starts with your why. Why do you want more women at your club? If anyone's ever read a book by Simon Sinek called Start With Why, he basically states in that book that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So Emily, get really clear on why you want more girls at your club and start promoting that, and then allow women to be attracted to you versus having to go put a noose around their neck and dragging them to you. Metaphorically speaking, of course. Okay, Jenny, good surfers seem to get a lot of respect. How would you encourage us average surfers to feel like we are worthy of roles in surfing as well as spots in the lineup? Jenny, you're worthy irrespective of your surfing ability. Everyone's worthy of catching a quality wave. Everyone's worthy of fulfilling a quality role in the surfing world. It just comes down to your sense of self-worthiness. And if you believe that you have something to offer, especially the surfing world, whether it's administration or judging or coaching, then and if you don't feel confident enough to share that wisdom with anybody, then find someone who is doing what you do and learn from them and tap into their knowledge and experience. Because like I said, you surround yourself with experts, you save yourself a lot of time. So as an aspiring world champion surfer, I had the great fortune of growing up on the northern beaches, and I was surrounded by world champions. So I just tapped into every one of them. You know, I surfed with longboard world champions, kneeboard world champions, surfing world champions. Ironman world champions. You know, I just surrounded myself with as many world champions as I could. So if it comes to aspiring to fulfill a role within surfing in any shape or form, whatever role that is, then put your hand up and tap into the knowledge that you have around you. And when it comes to getting a wave in the lineup, yeah, go and find the best surfer in the water and ask them to get you a wave. Share one. I'll share one with you. Paddle out at Freshie. I'll give you a good one. Only one. Maybe two. Okay. Manly Male Club subsidise women and kid membership fees to proactively balance membership. Well, that's a good piece of advice. Thanks for sharing that, Sue. Lisa Brown, my friend's husband said it's the way you sell the board riders comp when we were trying to recruit more women. You will get the best bank on the beach all to yourself. That should sell it. It's not always the case, but hey, irrespective of what bank you get on the beach, you get an access all areas pass when you put on a jersey. You can catch any wave you want and no one can stop you. You can drop in on the best surfers in the water and they can't do anything about it because you've got a rash vest on and they don't. It's a license to kill. Yeah, that's why I joined the surfers too. Okay, any other questions? I have a million stories and I don't know what to tell you, but I trust that I've shared enough with you.
There's been so many incredible questions already. If anybody does have any more questions, this is your opportunity. It's not often you get Layne on the line and so openly, generously sharing so much gold. So get those last bit of questions in and she'll take it away with the next couple of minutes before we sign off for the first session.
Antoinette said, where would I like to see club surfing in 10 years? I would like to see it with equal female-male participation. That would just be gold. I would actually love to see a lot of clubs run by women. I feel that, you know, there's a missed opportunity there. One of the things I'm so super excited about was the announcement that Brooke Farris is now the CEO of Rip Curl. It's the first female to be holding a CEO role in the surfing industry. Who would have thought that it took so bloody long, but hallelujah, thank goodness it has. So I'm extremely proud of her and grateful for Rip Curl seeing the value in that. Where do you, okay, now they're flooding in. What do you focus on when you're having a shit surf day? Maybe never for you, to get you back on track. Well, Isabel, yeah, you've seen me out at Freshie. You know I have bad days, but then maybe my bad days could be the equivalent of one of your good days. I don't know. But when I'm having a bad day, I actually just focus on the beauty and the beauty of the day. I anchor myself in the gratitude that I actually have the time to surf today, because I don't always have the time to surf. And all I say to myself is a day in the water is better than a day in the office. So I actually went out at Freshie during the big swell during last week and I caught 3 closeouts and came in. And I just wrote it off as a bad day in the water. And then I paddled back out in the afternoon and actually had 3 good ones. So it doesn't define me. I just anchor myself in. It's just one of those days. And honestly, I have a lot of bad days in the water. I do lift myself up by saying, like, I just want to do one good turn. And then I do a good turn. I'm like, yes, there's my day. Done. Boom. Feels so much better. So keeping it simple and measuring my expectations. Because I used to oversurf the conditions. So Shout out to Kate Moran, the first female president of Manly Mal Club. Yeah, Kate, nailed it. Beyond a passion for surfing, what leadership competencies and functional competencies are needed to grow the surfing business? You said you were looking for the right talent. What is needed? Oh, goodness. Olivia, that's way beyond my pay grade to answer that question within the next 3 minutes of this call. Maybe Luke Madden can jump in and answer that one. But as far as competencies are concerned, listen, I think it all comes down to the passion that you have for it, the vision that you have for it, and the understanding that you have of it, and knowing that, yeah, you're not going to be the smartest person in the room. 50-50 membership at Umina. Nice work. Female board riders clubs are there? I have no idea. My biggest role models and why? That's a good question. I don't have any. I'll say no today, though. My favourite surfers are Steph Gilmore and Sally Fitzgibbons and Tyler Wright. And I also love Isabella Nichols. Molly Picklum is my future rising star. And I'm just so excited to see surfing in the Olympics. And Rachel just asked, where do I see women's professional surfing in 10 years? I would love to see the same amount of women on tour as the men, because we're now generating that depth of talent. One of the reasons why we didn't expand the tour, because there wasn't the depth of talent, but that's because also that there wasn't the talent pathways feeding it. So it's about, equality in the water, equality at events, equality in prize money, and equality in opportunity. A lot of the challenges that we see is that when women retire from the sport, there's no real stepping stone for them to step into the industry, or there's no real support for the women post-career. So I'd love to see all of those things start to be invested into women and the women's tour. What's your proudest moment of my surfing career? Oh man, April, geez, getting deep now. Proudest moment? Proudest moment. Look, the first thing that came to mind, I always trust this. Look, most people would say winning 7 world titles, or winning Chopu, or riding the biggest waves. You know, I used to ride 50-foot waves. But my proudest moment was the year that Sofia Milanovic won the world title. So it was 2004. It was the year after I won my 6th consecutive one, and I had to hand the trophy over to Sofia. But of course, being a Roxy event, they didn't give me the opportunity to do that. So they invited Lisa Anderson up onto the stage and gave her the world title trophy to give to Sofia, which was deeply insulting. However, I let that one go. And when they asked me on the stage, is this bittersweet? You know, it's bitter because I lost the world title, but sweet because I won the event. I literally said openly and honestly from my heart, no, this is sweet and sweet. It's sweet because, yeah, I've won the event, but what even sweeter is that Sofia Milanovic is going to be a national hero in her country, because there was no other Peruvian world champion athlete in the world. And I was just so excited for Sofia. I mean, what a tremendous opportunity. And she was so beautiful and bubbly and talented. And I just felt that it was just the perfect position for the sport to find itself in. And the highlight for me, it wasn't that talk, was that afternoon we left the beach and we went over to Haleiwa Joe's to celebrate the event and the tour is done. And when I walked in, I received a standing ovation from my peers. And I had never received a standing ovation from my peers, and it brought me to tears. And I felt so proud that my peers were now seeing me in a different light. They were seeing me in the light that I wanted to be seen in, and I can't influence that only through my actions. And I was just really grateful for that moment in my life. So that was one of my proudest moments. Mindset to get me through wiping out in front of people I knew. The mindset I adopt, Kaylin, is laughing. Just laugh at yourself, just giggle. They'll forget it. You might not, but just giggle at it. And with that, it's 8:01. I want to respect your time. I want to thank you all for joining me here tonight. I know it was a bit all over the shop, but I wanted to keep it light and fun and entertaining and as interactive as possible. I want to congratulate every one of you for joining us here tonight. I want to thank once again Surfing New South Wales for establishing this initiative and investing in women's surfing. And I look forward to every single one of you fulfilling the dreams that you have for yourself within surfing, within the surfing world, whether it's coaching, whether it's judging, it doesn't matter. Just go out there, establish your vision, surround yourself with your dream team, and take action daily that's going to get you closer to fulfilling it. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you so much, Layne, and to everybody for tuning in. I hope that you have taken multiple bits of gold from that. The generosity that you come into tonight's session with, Layne, is incredible. And I've heard you speak so many times. Obviously, I've seen you surf so much and been involved along the way through the careers, and I've never ever seen you so generously offer up so much gold. So I hope that everyone's got something out of that. And I can see there's just so much response coming in the chat box. And there's so many women that want to work in the industry. And let me tell you, being on here is a great first step, especially getting in touch with your state bodies. There is that much opportunity. Like Layne has been saying, it's a time in our sport and in our industry where there is this overflowing opportunity if you have your eyes open and you have that positive perspective on, like Layne had spoken about throughout her speech. So I'll hand you back on over to the programs coordinators, Rachel and Claire, to take you through the end and sign you off and talk about next week's session. And yeah, massive thank you to Layne. You've been incredible for our opening masterclass. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for all the love in the chat box too. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Jess and Layne. Love the rare and honest words. It's really conversations like these that is where change is essentially starting. And watching the chat box, it's really great because it's informing us what you guys want and need. And in sessions 2, 3, and 4, we're going to be really diving into those points in detail. So thank you again for all your questions. Without all you guys, we wouldn't have such a great representation of female leaders in our sport. So keep that up. We've had a lot more interest than we expected tonight, maxing out at 100 people. So it's great to know that what we're doing is in demand. So remember, next week, use the same link to tune in, and we're going to be talking to Chelsea Hedges and Glenn Elliott, and that's going to be surfing leadership pathways. So really diving into coaching and judging and the pathways around that. So remember to, yes, use the same link. But if you think this is something maybe some of your friends may benefit from, please direct them to the Surfing New South Wales website. And we'll see you guys all next week. See ya.
Have a great night, everyone.